Uh-oh, wrong camera. But this is the right one. Hey friends, happy Friday. I am so excited to be here with you. I'm just checking to make sure that okay, good. Audio is happening. It is happening. We are live and the audio is picking up. I literally just clipped my microphone on about, 30 seconds ago. So was hoping it would work. I hope you're having a wonderful Friday night. I am here alone in my sewing room and what is that? The one song is Reunited and It Feels So Good. We're just going to change that. I'm all alone and it feels so good. Ian is at home this weekend and we are starting our journey now that he is settling into his area, into his apartment, into this area, my area. Now that he's settling in here, he won't be here on every one of my Friday night lives. And I'm okay with that. Likewise, he won't be doing his live streams from my studio all the time anymore. And I'm here for that too, because that means it is his own place, his own time, and I want to give him his own space to be Ian in his own right, just like I want my own space to be Becca here on my channel. So if you are expecting Ian to walk through the door, spoiler alert, not going to happen today. He is at home this weekend. It's so quiet in here. My sister was here for about a week. And so I had her here. I had Ian popping in the evenings. We recorded our second podcast episode, which will be dropping on Wednesday of this week. And so all of these wonderful things have been happening, but this is the first time I feel like I've been in my sewing room sewing kind of alone and quiet without the Pro Stitcher going nonstop for the past week or so. And I'm kind of loving it. I'm energized. I am ready to work on something. The work week is done and I have an idea of what I want to make. So the command exclamation project will get you a link to a pattern that I'm going to start with tonight. Spoiler alert, this is a pumpkin quilt. And I'm going to talk to you about that in just a moment. But before we do, I just realized I can't see the chat. I don't have the chat open at all. So I'm going to open it up in another window. And this is like literally me just stalling for a couple of minutes while I try to get it up and running. All right. Literally 2 more seconds. I have no idea what y'all are saying in the chat. It could be good, it could be bad, it could be wonderful. I don't know. We'll find out in a minute. All right. It's loading. Okay. Okay, I do see it. Awesome. Okay, now I can see the chat. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So let me talk to you about the project that I picked out for tonight. It is called White Pumpkins, and it is by a lady by the name of Jessica Dayan. It is a free pattern that you could download, and you could certainly do it the way that she has the pattern written out. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. But you know me. Ain't nobody got time for a pattern to follow it step by step, because whenever life gives you the opportunity to cut corners and find shortcuts and make something your own, I'm here for it. That is me. And so that's what we're going to be doing tonight. I want to show you the fabric that I have chosen for this. So the pattern, if you click on the link and you look at it, essentially what it's going to do is make a really good size throw quilt with 2 colors. The background on the quilt is like this cross grain gray, and then the pumpkins are just white. And I got to tell you, I am not a big Halloween fan. I like the candy, but I'm really just not into the Halloween thing. So when it comes to making Halloween-like quilts, not really my cup of tea. I also don't love fall colors. I don't like those deep burgundies and the oranges and the things that you see in the trees. I do think the trees changing color are very pretty, but my color palette is like the opposite end of the spectrum. I like the colors that are bright for the spring and the summer. I'm not about the fall colors. And so for that reason, I don't often like to create a lot of autumn projects for Thanksgiving, Halloween, whatever the case may be. And so I don't really have a lot of those quilts, whether they're throw quilts for the back of my couch for the fall season or they're wall quilts, whatever they might be. I don't have them because I don't like working with orange. I don't like working with fall colors, and I don't like Halloween. So there you go. I tend to want to skip over Halloween and even some of Thanksgiving and get right into the good stuff with Christmas. But I think I'm going to change my mind tonight, and here's why. When I saw this pattern, I thought, wait a minute, I could make a fall quilt that would be good for September, October, and November, right up until Christmas, using the pumpkins. And what a novel idea to make it two different colors. And it just so happened that I had some of this beautiful ombre bloom fabric in the color orange sitting out because I had made a black whole, like I quilted a fat quarter of black on the Pro Stitcher, and then I bound it in this orange, and I made it like a trick or treat bowl for a swap. And I thought, wait a minute, I can use this. And because it's ombre, it's going to have some of the movement in the pumpkin bodies. So what I'm going to do is modify the dimensions a little bit, and you're going to kind of see me work through the math in my head to see what I like and what I don't like, because I know one thing is for certain. I don't want my pumpkin to be the size it's in the pattern. I want my pumpkin to square up, my pumpkin block to square up at about 9.5 inches. So I'm going to have to work out all the math in my head, and you're going to see that real time. And it's going to feature this lovely fabric for the pumpkins and the stem, because we're only going to work with two colors. And then for the background, I'm going to work with this gray. This is a Blossom from Riley Blake, and I feel like the two together are just here. Like this is doing it for me, and so that's what we're going to work on. I have no idea how I'm going to cut the fabric or what the measurements are going to be. So I think I need to first pull out some paper and sketch some things out and do some math in my head. And I'm going to bring you along for the ride because watching somebody else, like struggle with math is fun, right? Yeah, maybe? No? I don't know. I got to figure out the math before I can actually make the block. And by doing this, I'll be able to give you guys the instructions, because I'm sure somebody out there is going to say, I don't want to make it like that. I want to make it like what you're doing. What are the measurements? So let's figure it out. We're going to go to the overhead camera so that you can see what I'm doing with my math. And let me just bring you in a little bit tighter here. Yep. Okay, that'll work. All right. So I have a Sharpie. Can you see this? Okay. Yeah, I guess so. All right. Let's see. So I know that I want my pumpkin block to be square. And I know I want it to be 9.5 inches up and down and 9.5 inches left to right. And for the sake of this discussion, I am talking about the squared size here. And I know that might be a little difficult to see, so I'm going to zoom in as much as I can so you can see the paper while I'm working on this. Let's just get that nice and in frame for you. All right, so that's 9.5 inches up and down, 9.5 inches left and right. Well, let's think about how I want my pumpkin to look. Now, I can make this a variety of different shapes. Realistically, I know I kind of want like some negative space up here at the top for the background. And then the next row down, I want to have a stem that's approximately in the middle of the block. So I'm just going to draw another row where I have that stem kind of identified. And then this is going to be kind of the body of the pumpkin. And I know I want to snowball those corners. I want it to look like a fat round pumpkin. I don't want it to, this is just what I want. You can do whatever you want. And so when I'm looking at this, I'm trying to pay attention to the proportions of these. And this looks like it's about 1/3 of the block. And this looks like it's about 2/3-ish of the block. So that being said, if I know this is going to square to 9.5 inches, then I know my cut along one side is going to be 9.5 inches. Trying to figure out how big I need to cut my pumpkin body. 9.5 inches. If we're looking at about the 1/3 and 2/3-ish ratio, then I want to take that 9-ish number and divide it into thirds. And that's about 3, right? 3.5 or so for a third. So if I did 3.5 up here for the top, and I did 6.5 down here for the bottom, that should get me 10, right? Because 10 minus 1/4 inch off the top and 1/4 inch off of the bottom, when you sew them together, would square up to 9.5. So I think what I need to do is cut a pumpkin body at 6.5 inches by 9.5 inches. So this is my pumpkin body. Now I need to figure out how I want to work this. Well, I already know that this is going to be a strip. So this strip is just going to be my background at something by 9.5 inches wide. I don't know what that something is yet, but I do know that if this top section is 3.5 inches tall up and down, then if I just divide that in half or close to half, it's going to work for me. I don't want to work with eighths or even quarters if I can help it. I want everything to be whole numbers or half numbers just because it's easier for my brain. So I think what I'll do is if this is 3.5 inches, then if I make this top one cut at 1.5 inches, then it'll finish at 1 inch. And then that means down here, 2.5 inches, which means I've got to cut 3 inches by something. All right, I'll need 2 of these plus the stem. Now this stem is going to be 3 inches, maybe by 3 inches. That feels like it's going to be really big. I don't know if I like that. Let's figure out the stem when we get there. Let's focus on this first. All right, I've got I'm going to do 2.5 inches for these snowballed corners. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to start by cutting out a 6.5 inch by 9.5 inch square of this beautiful fabric. But I need a ruler to do that. And I don't know where I set my big ruler. Did I not even bring it over here? Did it run away from me? Oh, good grief. Oh, it's right here. I'm blind. It's right there. Okay, so I think I'm ready to try to get started playing with this. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to chat with some folks in here. Pat Strawhouse says 6.5 inches by 10 inches. No, 6.5 inches by 9.5 inches. I want to square to 9.5 inches. What is in the pattern is not the size measurements that I will be working with. I'm making my own size measurements. And this is a test block. And the only way I know if this is going to work is to try it. So we're going to try it. I am going to, where's my rotary cutter? My sister was in my room. Ah, here it is. Okay. I don't know if this will work or not. Only one way to find out. All right. Probably not the most efficient use of the fabric for this sample, but again, actually, I want the ombre to go up and down. I'm making decisions as I go. I might change the body of this slightly, just looking at the fabric. I'm thinking I might do 8.5 by 8.5 for right now. We're going to make it a square. Like I said, I'm trying to figure this out on the fly. Am I giving you whiplash with the creative decisions that I'm making as I go? Yeah, I'm sure somebody out there is like, stop! You're killing me! I'm going to go with a square because I think that might work better for what my vision is. I'm going to cut out some 2.5 inch. I'm going to go with an 8.5 inch square there. Now I'm going to cut out a 2.5 inch strip from my background fabric. And I'm going to subcut that into as many 2.5 inch squares as I can get because I will need them for additional blocks. Hello, everybody joining in the chat. All right, there we go. That'll get rid of that. And now we're going to subcut this into our 2.5 inch squares because we're essentially just going to snowball this block to be our pumpkin body. And then we're going to take some orange to make a pumpkin stem and surround it with some gray fabric. And then I'll probably, in fact, I might just do a topper. Actually, yeah, that would work. I don't think the pumpkin block needs to be square. We're going to go with a square body, snowball it, and put our stem on top. And then I'll probably just add sashing and cornerstones to the quilt just to give it a little bit of dimension so the pumpkins aren't bumping up against one another. I think I like that. I've got it in my head. We'll have to see how it gets executed. All right, so to subcut this down, we're going to cut this at 10 inches wide, and then I'm just going to start sliding the ruler over 2.5 inches, lining up the part of my ruler that I want to measure with on that fresh cut that I got. So there were 7.5. Here go 5. Here go 2.5. And I know I'll need 4 for every pumpkin block that I make because I want to snowball all 4 corners. So let's try and put one together and see if we want to modify this even more. We won't know until we do it, am I right? So to snowball my corners, all I'm going to do is put a little square in the corner of my block. And I'm going to take a marking utensil. You don't have to do it this way if you don't want to. In fact, I don't want to use that pen. I want to use my air-soluble pen. And I'm just going to use a straight edge to draw a line from one corner to the other. Just like that. Is this dried out now? There we go. Didn't want to work the first time. There. I'm going to do that on all 4 corners. It's the Great Pumpkin Quilt, Charlie Brown. You know what? I think that's a good name for this quilt, Bill. And I'm telling you, like, I think this is going to be something that I'll be able to whip up in no time flat and get loaded onto the long arm and actually be able to use this season. So I'm kind of like in caffeinated mode. Let's go. Let's get it sewn together because I want to have it quilted, and I would love to be able to show you the quilt fully finished on next week's live stream. Hello, Mary. Glad you're here tonight. Kathy says, I love pumpkins. I have so many around the house. My husband says I have too many, but what does he know? I have a friend that loves pumpkins too. It could be jelly roll friendly with yardage for the pumpkins. That's right, Kate. It could also be layer cake friendly. So you could pull a layer cake, and if we modify the layer cake to be 7.5 inches or 7 inches squared cut out of it, you'd have enough from that layer cake piece to make your stem. And then you could use a jelly roll of a solid to do your stem up at the top and add all your other things. So if you're doing this from a layer cake, and maybe we'll try a block with those measurements to see what happens. If you did a layer cake and a jelly roll, you could have a really nice looking quilt put together. We just got to figure out what the math is for that. All right, so now I'm going to take this to my sewing machine. I'm going to line up my square fabric on the square body of the pumpkin. I do want to make, it doesn't really actually matter what direction the fabric's facing because I'm going to snowball all 4 corners and it's completely square. I'm going to put my needle just 1 thread to the right of that line that I drew, and I'm going to stitch. I think Ruby's a little mad at me because I've spent so much time on the long arm this week, and last weekend. That's fine. She's about to get all the love she can handle. But I do need a leader and an ender, and here they are. I don't know where my other one went, so here's my extra stash, and I'll just get this going. It's beginning to smell a lot like pumpkin. I hope this turns out the way I think it will in my head. All right, now that I have all of those stitched, I am going to bring my straight edge over, line up my ruler about a 1/4 inch away from that line that I stitched. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just using the straight edge to help me hold my rotary cutter and keep it away from my hands. Mary is asking, are you preferring your Ruby over your more modern machines? You know, it's actually funny. I was talking about that this week. I prefer to piece on my vintage machines. I have a featherweight that I'm itching to get out and play with, but I really do prefer my piecing on Ruby when at all possible. It's a Singer 301. I do have a Juki set up in here, and I did use her a little bit this week, but nothing, it wasn't a ton because I really don't have a lot of time right now to sew during the week anyway. However, it was funny because we were talking about, I was like, it's hilarious because I'm over here piecing on vintage machines and excited about it. And then when it's done, I toss it on a long arm with Pro Stitcher and I do all the tech stuff. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, if you ask me. I did get somebody commented on my live stream from last week, and they very kindly informed me that by using Pro Stitcher, I wasn't a real quilter. I was like, okay, deleted. I deleted the comment. I'm not here for your negativity. It's what I like to do. You don't have to. All right, I am waiting for my iron to heat up, so we're going to give that a moment. Hello, Alexandria. How are you? Lori says, I made hotel reservations for Quiltcon. My niece lives in Phoenix, but doesn't have a guest space. So I'm glad you got your hotel reservations out of the way, Lori. Be excited to see you. Carrie says, I took my niece to the quilt shop to pick fabric for her quilt now that I want to make for her. I got home and saw that she chose Tula Pink's Spider Blossom. Awesome. That is still warming up, so we'll give that another minute. And I have not had dinner yet. My husband made lasagna, but he bought like a pre-made frozen lasagna, I think. And he didn't realize it was going to take 2 hours to cook. So I did grab myself a fig bar because I'm a little hungry. So please forgive me for eating just a little bit. All right. Now we got to figure out how we want to top this sucker off. This is my pumpkin block. I like it round. We're going to go with round. I like that shape. Although, we might try and do it a little bit smaller. I'm going to go with 2.5 inches across the top and see what that gives me. So to do that, I need to cut some 2.5 inch squares and strips. So I'm going to cut a 2.5 inch strip right off of this because I need to cut for the stem. Although, if I cut this at what was it, 8.5? I guess you could do 1.5 if you're using a layer cake. Let's see if we can make this layer cake friendly. I'm going to cut a 1.5 inch strip. Let's see if we can make this layer cake friendly. Oh, that's cute. Yeah. What if we did 1.5 inch by 2.5 inches? I don't know if I love how big that stem looks, but we can always make it smaller. So I'm going to cut it at 2.5 inches tall. I'm going to look and see if I don't hate that. What do you guys think? Is that stem too tall? Would you take a 1/2 inch off of it? I think so, yeah. Let me know. Yes or no, is the stem too tall right now? Let me know in the chat. I'm watching the chat to see what y'all say. Lori says, I would love a long arm with Pro Stitcher. More productivity means more people blessed with quilts. Well, once I get up and running, I think there will be some, I won't be able to do a lot of them, but I do want to be able to do some charity quilts. And so I'm already thinking about like the Alaska quilts for So Yeah next year. Yes, a bit tall. Yes, a bit tall. Yes, a bit tall. Okay. Seeing lots of bit talls, but people are saying no, don't forget about the seam allowance. So let's just measure what that 1/4 inch would look like and hide it so that you can kind of see. So this is about what it would look like after the seam allowance. Do we think it's still too tall? Sister Marie's Kitchen. Becca, with all that you accomplish in your sewing room on top of everything else, it's inspiring. Could be a hair thinner, G Quilter says. Well, I'm not going to make it. I don't think I'm going to make it any thinner because I don't want to deal with, I mean, I guess I'm going to also take off seam allowances when I sew in the gray. So wrong color, Pam says. It's the same exact fabric. We're making a 2-tone quilt, remember. We're not trying to make this realistic. So the pumpkin's going to be all orange, including the stem. Linda says, if it were green or brown, a tall one would be good. If orange, make it a bit shorter. Okay. How do we think about that? Now it looks kind of like an ornament, doesn't it? A little bit. Should we make it shorter? I can't help but see ornament a little bit. Although, actually, I guess it doesn't matter because you could totally follow this same block pattern with Christmas fabric. You could totally follow the same block pattern with Christmas fabric so that it's an ornament. Exclamation pattern, Carol. She's asking, where do you find the free pattern? Exclamation pattern. We'll get it for you. All right. I now have it finishing at 1.5 inches, which means I would need to cut that at 2 inches because of the seam allowances. So what do we think about 1.5 by, what do we, well, keep in mind that, you know what? Hold on. Want to see what it'll look like? Let's find out. So it'll be 1.5 inches this way. And then 1 inch this way. I'll show you what the exact size would look like that I'm thinking. And ultimately, it probably doesn't even really matter, right? You guys are probably... This is what I'm thinking. Oh, that's good. I like that. There's no seam allowances that would be taken off here because I just cut what the finished size would be. I think that's what I'm going to go with, regardless of what the chat might say. So if this finishes at, let me measure again. Yeah, they're all going to be the same size pumpkin because it's just going to be easier. This little piece is measuring at 1.5 inches by 1 inch. And so in order for this to finish at 1.5 inches by 1 inch, I need to cut it at 2 inches by 1.5 inches. So 2 inches by 1.5 inch. That is my 1.5, and that's my 2. It's taller than it is wider, and so it will actually go like this. And I know that looks a little bit bigger right now, but I haven't taken my seam allowances off of it. So once I take those seam allowances off, it's going to be a little bit of a different story. And so now this is where I'm going to go into my background, and I'm going to pull out a strip of, what did we say that was, 2 inches? Yep, a strip of 2 inches that I can use to put on either side of that stem. So I'm just going to cut a 2-inch by width of fabric strip. And I don't know exactly how wide it needs to be, so I've got to do that math now. If I know that this is going to be, what did we say, 1.5 inches wide? Nope, 2, hold on. That's 2, 1.5. Yep, 1.5 inches wide. So I know, where'd my pen go? Got to do the math. If I'm going to have a strip, and in the middle, this is going to finish at 1 inch, we cut at 1.5 inches. Then if I want all of this to be 9.5 inches squared, I have a seam allowance here and a seam allowance here. So this actually goes up by a full 1/2 inch because I have a 1/4 inch here and a 1/4 inch here. So this is actually going to be 10 inches that I need to accommodate for. But then I have the 1 inch in the middle that I need to get rid of. So I'm going to take off 1 inch. Now it's going to be 9 inches. And if I divide that by 2, it's going to be 4.5. So I think for the top, I'm going to need to cut for the stem 1.5 by 2 inches. We've already decided that. And then I'll need 2 of my background pieces at 1.5 by 4.5. Wait, no, 2 inches. 2 inches by 4.5. Let's see if that works. Did I just make it anybody else's head spin? Because I feel like I made mine spin. So I think I need 2 that are 4.5 inches here. Let's see if that works. All right, 4.5, 4.5. Now I'm just going to sew these together like a strip set. We're going to put the orange right in the middle. And if this works out the way I think it will, it should be the same width as my pumpkin block. And since I don't have any seams to nest up, it really doesn't matter what direction I press this in. I can press it open, I can press it to the middle, I can press it out, I can press it all to the left, all to the right. It doesn't really matter. And there's not going to be a lot of bulk either, so we should be good. Let's give this a press. I happen to be pressing this underneath the gray. I will tell you, if you're doing this and you have white as your background fabric, maybe don't press it under the white. Or if the pumpkins are white, maybe don't press it under the white pumpkins. Moment of truth. Did we do this right? Yeah, there was a mic on the table to my right. Okay, so this is a bit bigger than what I expected it to be. Let's see how wide this measures. It's just because I did the math a little too wonky, but we can find out exactly how much we're off. So this is measuring at 9.5. Okay, that's 9.5. Is my pumpkin not 9.5? Oh, I cut it at 8.5. Y'all, you didn't catch me. This needs to be 8.5. So I'm going to find the center here because I want the thing to be in the center. You probably did try to catch me and I just wasn't even paying attention to the chat. All right. So 8.5 divided by 2 is 4.25, not 4.5. So we're going to do 4.25 right there in the middle where I folded it. Should be taking about a 1/4 inch off of either side. Thank you, Sarah. Y'all caught it. See, the chat's catching up. Didn't you change that to 8.5? Yes, I did. Thank you for catching that. And then we're going to cut this 1/4 inch off. And now they should measure up to be the same size. So let's try again. And like I said, I think this is easily adaptable to using doing this as a Christmas quilt if you wanted to get ahead of the season. It's the same thing. You could take a piece of focal fabric, snowball the four corners, and then maybe pick, use your background to put on either side of it. But this little topper that I'm doing for the stem, you could pick a really pretty piece of silver, gray, or gold fabric to make the ornament topper. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Deneen caught it quick. Thank you, Deneen. Vicky says, my brain has a mind of its own. Mine does too sometimes. All right, here is our moment of truth. Oh, that looks so cute. I want to give it more starch, but my starch is on the other side of the room. So we're just going to go with what I have. This is what the block will look like. What do we think? Does it look like a pumpkin to you? Or should the pumpkin be shorter? Should we try one where it's shorter? If we're going to make changes to the dimensions or size of the block, now's kind of the time. I think we can still work with the stem the way it is, but I just wonder if it's not square, if it's rectangular, if that would read more like a pumpkin. What do you think? Or is there something that I could do to maybe just, I think that looks like a house, so we don't want to do that. I was thinking if we didn't snowball the corners. Shorter, yes? Okay. Tail says, Lily, I have no idea. She lost me at the first divide by 2. I am going a little fast. So, but once I get everything down and I've done the math, I'll repeat the numbers slower for you. All I'm trying to do right now is just process what I'm going to need. So you're okay. I think a little shorter. Perfect as is. Squatty pumpkin would be cute. We're going to try one where it's a 6.5 by 8.5, and we're going to see what happens. So I'm going to cut a 6.5 inch square off of this, or 6.5 by 8.5 actually. Different sizes would look good. Shorter or taller would be better, not round. Got it. Yeah, the round to me isn't reading the right way. Hello, Carol. All right. We're going to go with 8.5 here, 8.5 wide. Oh, maybe a smaller snowball on the bottom corners? Okay, we can try that too. We can come up with something that will work, and then we'll all have a pattern that we will have made together, and whatever I figure out dimension-wise, I will put as a free download on my website if you want to pop over and see what the cutting dimensions were. Why did I change from 8.5 to 9.5? Because I wanted to make it layer cake friendly. All right, so this is a 6.5 inch by 8.5 inch piece of fabric. And somebody had mentioned, what if we made the snowballs a little bit smaller? So I am now looking for my snowball squares. I need 4 of them, but 2 of them I'm going to cut down to maybe, I'm going to cut 2 of them to 2 inches and 2 of them to 1.5 inches, since the pumpkin's a bit smaller. I like Ruby. I love Ruby's voice. Me too. Okay. Make the snowball a bit smaller. And we'll make them different sizes for the top and bottom. Don't know if this is fully necessary, but I'd like to see what happens if I do that. The only way you'll know if you are able to do something or it's going to work out the way you want it to is if you try. All right. Where's my, here they are. Snip, snips. See how the top looks. Not too shabby. Let's do the bottoms. Lynn says, I love that you are playing around with all the different sizes, Becca. Listen, this is what happens in my brain when I'm trying to figure stuff out. You don't know what's going to work until you try it, right? I can draw things up, but really I want to just, once I've got an idea for a block in my head, I just want to keep working at it until I find the size that works for me. And then once you get the block down, it's rinse, lather, repeat. You just got to test out the block a few times. And all that means is you're going to have orphan blocks from the project, and those orphan blocks can be put into a number of different projects. You can make some Holland pouches out of them, some Hemingway pouches out of them. You can make some pot holders, some mug rugs, some placemats, put some borders around them, make some placemats, a whole bunch of things. So they're not wasted. They just might not go into your quilt top. They could go into the quilt back. Is there a difference between VIP and membership? Deb, the VIP program on my website gets you access to all of the patterns that I sell for free. But otherwise, you both have access to the Zooms that I do. The other thing with my VIP on my website is that you can get emails from me when I send them out. And Deborah says, I enjoy watching you get creative. I am folding my fabric onto comic boards. Lynn says, and no pumpkin is the same. Well, I think all of my pumpkins will probably be the same once I figure it out. But you're right. No two pumpkins are the same. I'm wondering if I like the bigger snowballs on the bottom of the block, maybe, rather than on the top. Oh, no. I like them on the top better. The small snowballs on the bottom kind of give it a little bit more dimension. It doesn't make it feel so circular. Look at that. Oh, that's cute. I think this is where I'm going. I think this is it. I think this is where I'm going. Okay, so this is 8.5 inches wide. I am going to make the same size top for this. Let's just see. Yeah, I think that would work. I'm going to make the same size top. So what do we say? 4 1/4 by, here it is, 4 1/4 by 2 inches. Linda says she is trimming woven star units tonight. Wonderful. So that is 4 1/4 there. 2 of them. And then we said, what was this? I can't remember. 1.5 by 2. 1.5 by 2. Is this still 1.5? Is that what this is? This is 1.5. And that is 2. Perfect, but it's not perfectly straight. So we're going to clean that up on both sides. Make it nice and straight. So I was talking to Ian earlier this week, and I want to let you guys know that his live stream on Sunday, if I didn't say this already, is actually going to be from his new apartment. He won't be here in my sewing room. So for those of you that are tracking his traveling journey, I believe he's going to be sewing at his dining room table this Sunday. His sewing room is still not set up. I will be in Gaithersburg, Maryland, taking a handy quilter class for my pro stitcher. So, although I would more than gladly let him use my studio while I'm not home, I think he just wants to kind of be home on Sunday. Lynn says, I agree. Much better shape for a pumpkin. That one looks much better, more pumpkin shaped. Thanks, Zaza. I think that's what we're going to do. But the square one, I think, would make an excellent Christmas quilt. It could look like little Christmas ornaments. Doing cross stitch. My machine is in the shop. Oh no. Is it just there for its annual spa treatment? All right, now let's put this on the top. We like the smaller on the bottom, and I think this is going to be I did something different. It must have needed to be 4. That is, 4 1/8. It must have needed to be 4 1/8 because I've got some left over on either side. We'll see how much I have to cut off, and then we'll go from there. But my mistake can equal your success. Finding the center for my top and my bottom, because my top is ending up wider than what I expected it to be by probably 1/4 of an inch, which means sadly I might have to cut those strips at 1/8 of an inch to get it where I need it to be, which is fine. Or not 1/8. Is it 1/8? Maybe. We'll see. Hold on. I can figure out what I need to cut everything out once I see the block fully sized, because I can take measurements from that. So let's press my seam. Whoever had the genius idea to make the snowballs on the bottom smaller, kudos to you. That was an excellent idea. Still don't think it's perfectly in the center, but it will be close enough for government work. I'm going to square or clean up this edge here so that we can see what the block squares up to, and we can do our math, and I can give you the measurements for what you want to cut if you want to make this pumpkin block. All right. Let me just see what we got going on here. Perfect. All right, that is 1, 2, 3, 4 1/4. Okay, 1, 2, 3 1/2. So 4 1/8 on either side. 4 1/8. Let's write this down. And let's see if we can reproduce the block. So top BG is 2 that are 2 inches by 4 1/8 of an inch. The stem is 1 that is 2 inches by 1 1/2 inches. The pumpkin body is 1 at 6.5 inches by 8 1/2 inches. And then the snowballs, we'll say the top snowballs are 2 at 2 inches by 2 inches. And the bottom are 2 at, was this 1 1/2 by 1 1/2? Yep, sure was. 1 1/2 by 1 1/2. All right. I have made a couple of test blocks. This is the one that I am the most happiest with, and I believe these are the cutting instructions to make this block again. So we're going to test it by going through and trying to replicate this block following these cutting instructions, and we'll see if we produce that same block. Stems are not always in the middle, Linda says. Good. Okay. Yep, you're right. So we'll keep it, even if it's off a little bit. And that could be one of the things that you do. If you don't want to cut on that 1/8 of an inch for these pieces, you could cut it at 1/4, like 4 1/4 on either side, right? And then you can just put it on there, and if it's off center or askew a little bit, it'll just give you some of that authenticity to your block. All right, so this is 8.5, well, it's 9.5 inches wide. I'm going to cut this at 8.5 inches by 6.5, right there. Change the size of the stem to remove the 1/8. I could. It could be a 1 1/4. We can try that. All right. Although I like the size of that stem the way it is, so I don't know that I want to, but you could. You absolutely could. So there's my pumpkin body. This is going to be my pumpkin stem. We said 2 inches by 1.5 inches. So we'll do 2 by 1.5 right there. And then we need 2 4 1/8, which is not that hard to cut. At least it's not a 16th. Oh wait, no, 1/8 right there. I almost did 4 1/4 again. 4 1/8. And now I've got my squares cut over here. I'm going to cut 2 of them at 2 inches and 2 of them at 1.5 inch squares. We'll see if this block goes together a little bit better. You can make the stem area different on each pumpkin if you wanted to. I'm just going to go for uniformity because I just want to test these instructions to make sure that the cutting measurements are accurate so I can share them with everybody. But that's the beauty of taking a pattern and unleashing your creativity to make it your own. You don't have to always settle for the way the pattern designer or author wrote something. You can let that be your starting off point for your own creativity, your own work, it can be just your inspiration. I saw the pattern. I definitely saved it, bookmarked it, got you guys the link. You can do exclamation pattern to get the original pattern. But then I decided I wanted to make it my own. And so I'm taking the same exact thing that she did, and I'm just tweaking it to meet my needs. And it was a free pattern, so I don't feel like I'm causing her to lose any of her money. And you can still absolutely go visit her website because I'm sure she has more patterns out there too. There's my little stem unit. Okay. Now the big ones are at the top. And for this, we're going to be a little bit more careful. The other test blocks, we were just kind of whipping them out real quick to see if they worked. But now I want this to look a little bit better. So I'm going to be more precise in my piecing this time. And I'm actually going to draw the line on the wrong side of my squares so that I can get those perfectly to finish the corners of the block. There's that and that. Did you cut the pumpkin body at 8 inches? No, I believe I cut it at 8.5. Oh, maybe I did cut it at 8. Were you looking that close at my ruler? I sure did cut it at 8. I sure did. Okay. I cut it at 8 by 6.5. So we'll just make a little note. 8 by 6.5 this time. We'll see how it looks. Thanks for the heads up on that. See, I'm doing math in my head. I'm testing things. I'm talking to you, and I'm trying to monitor the live stream. And sometimes you drop off little things like that. So we'll see what happens. It'll be fine. All right. We're going to snowball the four corners. And because this is not square, I do need to make sure that I am paying attention to the direction that my fabric is going when I sew on those corners. Big ones go on the top. Small ones go on the bottom. That ruler confuses me. You got to use the rulers that work for your brains. It works for me, but just because it works for me doesn't mean it works for everybody. And I think that's true of any of the notions that we use. What would it look like if you changed the stem to green or brown? Decent, but I'm going for a 2-color quilt here, so I don't want to introduce that. But I have just given you the free cutting instructions, and I'll go over them again in a moment. So if you want to try and do one with a different color stem, you absolutely could. I want to keep my pumpkins to the same color, stem and all. I want it to be a 2-color quilt. I actually think cutting this at 8 inches might solve some of the struggle that we had with that seam allowance. So it'll be a little bit squattier, or you know what I mean. You know what I'm trying to say. But I think it'll work. So I'm probably going to be able to cut that at 4 inches now instead of the 4 1/4 or whatever. All right, I definitely cut this too narrow, but I didn't cut my strip for the stem at the top too narrow. So that's why I've got to trim this up here. So this is my second pumpkin, and this, or technically my third. So this is kind of the progression of what we've done. I got to be honest with you, I kind of like the smaller one even better. What do you guys think? That this is the 8 inch, this is the 8.5. I think I like the 8 inch better. What do you think? Waiting to see what you all say in the chat. I'll take a sip of water. What if you snowballed the corners with a retractable instead of a square? What do you mean a retractable instead of a square? I don't know what that means. 8 inch. Oh, wow. You like them both. 8.5, 8.5, 8, 8, 8, smaller. Why not turn the pumpkin sideways instead of long ways? We could do some that are this way. Absolutely. That would be fun. Look at that. You could also put them together so that they're all kind of like topsy-turvy, right? I like the smaller one better. With the side seam to be sewn. I like the larger one, Donna said. Okay. Not sure what the side seam is, but okay. Barbara says, I like the smaller one, but I would cut the stems at an angle. Cool. Could you do different sizes and put a sashing to make up the sizes? Yep, you sure could. I think I mean, you've seen how easy this is to put together, right? And so this is what we started with. And to me, this really reads more like an apple or a Christmas ornament, especially if we made this top smaller. It just doesn't have the pumpkin vibe to me. It's the right color, but it doesn't feel like the right shape. So this one, like if I'm going to keep it, I will probably come in and trim off the bottom because this is already up there. And then I'll just make smaller snowballs for the bottom. And that way it's squattier. These are the two that I made, and they're not actually they are the same height, but they're not the same width. One is wider by about 1/2 of an inch, and that's okay. But when I turn it sideways, it's still off by a little bit. But the fun thing about this is you can put them wherever you want. So the pattern had it laid out so that they were all kind of like nice and even in a row, and that's what you had. But in my mind, I wasn't going to do that. I wanted movement, and so I was going to stagger my pumpkins a bit, and I was going to put some sashing in between. So I was going to make one column of pumpkins and then do a nice long sashing and then another column of pumpkins, and I was going to stagger them so that there was negative space at the top of one row and then negative space at the bottom of the next row, which would kind of give it a fluid look. And here's my spoiler for you. I actually am not even going to measure how much is here. This might be 1 inch on this one, 3 inches on the next one, because I don't want anything to perfectly line up. I want them to be scattered and kind of staggered all over the place. I could take that a step further if I wanted to and make them different widths, as long as when I go to put them into the column, they all can be expanded to the width of the largest one that's in that column. So if I were to line these up, then in order to put this one into this space, I would need to add at least 1/4 inch of fabric on either side because this is a 1/2 inch bigger. I could also look at all the pumpkins that are going to go in that row and figure out what the widest one I want to be, is even adding that. So I might not have to add the sashing. I could just add it to each block and then in between each one of these. So there's a number of different things that you can do. It doesn't have to always be this way. The neat thing about this, I think, is if I put them right up against each other, but then I turn it around, I've just created pumpkins that kind of look like they're upside down, but it kind of works either way. So I think the way we put these blocks together, there's a number of different options. You can keep them all consistent and just scatter how they're laid out. You could keep them consistent and make sure they're perfectly lined up. You could change the shapes and the sizes of them. You could change the orientation of them, whatever works. But at the end of the day, all you're doing is taking a rectangular piece of fabric. I'm going to say 8 inches by 6.5 inches. And then you're going to take a 2-inch by 1.5 inch cut of the same fabric for the stem. For your snowballs, the two big ones up here, they're going to be 2 inches squared, and the small ones down at the bottom will be 1.5 inches squared. And then up here, I cut at 4.25 inches by 2 inches, two of them, and then I just put it on wherever I want that stem lined up, and I clean up the edges of it with the edge of the block. You could probably figure out where that needs to be. I did 4 1/8, but then I sewed it on to 4 1/8 for the 8.5 would be good, but I think 4 inches for the 8-inch one would be good. I hope that makes sense. And if it doesn't, like, just play around with it. That's the whole point of doing any of this, is you shouldn't feel like you can't try. I feel like a lot of times we get into our sewing room and we have all this fabric sitting behind us that we want to work with, and I feel like we get a little afraid to cut into that fabric and actually use it. But I feel like my fabric is going to look better in a finished quilt or a finished project than it does nicely folded and put away on my shelves. And so for me, I want to use my fabric, most of it. There are some pieces of it that I am savoring and just looking at and petting as I walk past, but I like to be able to put my fabric to use. And I feel like my creativity is at its best when I can be hands-on and try. So, yep. Susan says the 8.5-inch one will look like the 8-inch one once the seams are removed. You're right, it will. You're absolutely right, it will. I love your creative mind and how it works. Thank you, Barbara. Lynn says a pumpkin patch. Look, I like it. Susie says hello from Wyoming. Hello, hello, hello. Zaza says, I have a fat quarter bundle of peaches and oranges that I've been wondering what to do with. Problem solved now. Thanks, Becca. You're welcome. Listen, do it, like, cut into it. And you know what? Those fat quarter bundles, there's so much fabric in a fat quarter bundle. You guys, I pulled out a fat quarter bundle on a couple of different occasions for a quilt. And I started cutting into it and I was like, okay, I'm going to need all of this fat quarter bundle. But every time I do that, when I'm finished with the quilt, I am amazed at how many scraps I have left over from that. Hey, Tiff, from that fat quarter bundle. Lots of scraps are left over. And then I'm just kind of like, wow, I could make 2 or 3 quilts from that fat quarter bundle plus some background. So don't underestimate the number of projects that you're going to be able to make from that. Alexander said, thank you for being inspiring. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're welcome, you're welcome, you're welcome. Pam says, you know, pumpkins in a pumpkin patch aren't all the same size, so it would be cute to put on all different sizes all over the quilt, and that would be very pretty. Thank you. Guys, show Tiffany some love. She's been dealing with a lot of stuff, hasn't been in the, well, I know she's been lurking in some of the live streams, but she hasn't been active in the chat in a minute, so give her some hearts, give her some love. Marlene says, I love how you teach kindly as you go. I love the quilt behind you. I need to get mine out of the cabinet and put it on the wall. So this is the Bliss block of the month that came in the Sew Sampler box a few years ago. And the story behind this quilt is so inspiring. So I had started making tutorial videos for this, and then I believe I had moved or something had happened. I can't remember what it was, but life got busy and I got behind on the tutorial block of the month videos. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to get caught up. But I was only on block 6. I was so far behind that they had already announced the layout of the quilt before I could get caught up. And when I saw the layout and all of the flying geese that went into this and the half square triangle units, my mind exploded. And I wasn't necessarily feeling the fabric choice to begin with. So I just thought, you know what? I think this is a project that I am going to bless somebody with. So in one of my VIP Zooms, I had asked the girls that were on the VIP if anybody wanted that kit, I would pay it forward to them. No cost to them. I just put it in the mail and ship it out. I just wanted it off my shelves and I wanted to see somebody finish the quilt because I knew I wasn't going to. So I declared quilt bankruptcy on it, paid the project forward to a lady by the name of Stephanie Fulton. She got the project, and a little while later, the quilt top with prepared binding showed back up at my doorstep. And I was floored because I never expected to see that quilt again. And she had sent me a very kind letter with the quilt top that said that she has been quilting for 30 some years and she has more quilts than she knows what to do with. And all of her family has received enough quilts over time. She just enjoys making it. And so she was happy to see that she could help us. And apparently my 1/4 inch matched her 1/4 inch. So it made it easier for her. And so she blessed me back with the quilt. And I thought, okay, well, if a subscriber, somebody that I've met in the YouTube world, did this for me, then I don't want to be the one to quilt it. I want the story to be finished with Quilting by Beth. And so I passed that quilt forward to Beth, and she did a really nice kind of like geometric pattern on it that allows the design of the quilt layout to really kind of shine. It doesn't overpower it, but it gives it that added texture. And so that's the story of that quilt. I call it a flock of geese because every time I see it, all I see are tons of flying geese units. And it's funny because I've texted with Stephanie Fulton a couple of times. And when we've been talking, every time we talk about the quilt, the number of flying geese that we refer to in this quilt goes up. So first it was like 100 flying geese, and then it was like 5,000, and then it was like 1,000,000. And I didn't feel like I could really call the quilt 1,000,000 flying geese. So I just call it a flock of geese. So that is my story for that quilt. Dragonflies for Donna says, different size pumpkins with Linus from Charlie Brown. Waiting for the great pumpkin. Do an applique of them. Tiffany said, I'm mostly lurking, but since I was sort of sewing, I forgot Becca was live. But I'm here being lurky now. That's fine. You can go back to your lurky mode. That's okay. But everybody loves you, and they're giving you lots of hugs and lots of hearts. It did take forever, didn't it, Marlene? Tiffany is going with us to Quiltcon. We're really excited. So Bill and his friend, and then Ian and Tiffany and I are all sharing an Airbnb just outside, or a Verbo or something, just outside, a bit away from the convention center. It's going to be a different experience in Phoenix than it was in Raleigh, because in Raleigh we stayed at the hotel like right next door. But I'm so happy. I checked the Quiltcon website today or yesterday, I think it was, and they had the provider for your scooter rentals, for your ECVs listed on the website. So you can call and make your reservation for your scooter if you're going to need one for Quiltcon. And I secured one under my name so that Tiffany can use it, and maybe I can ride shotgun on the back. So if you see the two of us going through the aisles at Quiltcon on a scooter, don't tell the people that rented them. It'll be fine. But yeah, last year when we went to Raleigh, she was very adamant and about not wanting to take a scooter. She didn't want to put anybody out. And so she just brought her cane. And I was like, Tiffany, you're going to need more than that. So we had an extra walker here that we packed and took down to Raleigh. And she used that. And she was like, I'm going to be fine with this. I'll be fine with just the walker. But gosh, what was it like a couple hours into that first day, Tiffany? You were like, nope, my legs are done. My legs are done. And so Mary had driven up from Graniteville, South Carolina, and she has a very small portable scooter that she got for her mom. And so she was kind enough to bring it with her. And so Tiffany got to use that Friday night once Mary got in, and then all day Saturday and all day Sunday. And I think that helped her. But the walking that she did at the I think she did the wheelchair transport at the airport, so she didn't have to. But the walking that she did at Quiltcon just those 2 days, it threw her into a flare that she's been trying to get out of for a while. Lori says, I need to order one too. Go get the website. I think it is from Southwest Mobility. So definitely go reserve it. They're not taking payment right now, so you don't have to pay any money out of pocket to get your name on the list. You just call, you give them your name, your physical mailing address, I think your email, maybe not, but definitely your phone number. And then as the date gets closer, I think you'll get more information. But when you show up to pick up the scooter, you'll settle up payment when you go to pick it up from the desk. So if you're worried about having to pay for it right now, don't. Just get your name on the list, because they will sell out. There's only a finite number of scooters that they're going to be able to get their hands on. So if you think you're going to need one, even if it's just one that you need because you can walk, but you need a place to squat after a while, do it. Because I'm going to tell you, finding a place to sit is not going to be easy. Tiffany said it was like 2 hours, and then 2 hours in, and then I needed the walker, so I sat on the walker most of the time. Yep. Yeah, I feel you. Alexandria says, that's good to know. I hate using my cane and walker. There are a lot of people using the scooters, so don't feel self-conscious about needing them. Tiffany used one. I was traveling with a couple of other people that had them, and honestly, I have arthritis in my right knee. And so a lot of walking, usually a couple days in, I need to do a lot of sitting in between my steps. And so I'm kind of toying with the idea of like, oh, I want one, but I don't need one. I just need a place to be able to sit and relax my knee for a little bit or put a leg brace on it. If I were going to someplace like Disney World or something, which I am doing next year, I probably would get one just because that's a little bit different. But for the quilt show, for Quiltcon, I think I'll be okay. Sitting walkers can be helpful. Yes, they can. Yep. Debbie's quilting studio says, yeah, I could tell she didn't feel great when she went out for supper. Yeah. Yep. The concrete floor at Raleigh was way tough, Shelby said. It sure was. It sure was. You know what I'm really excited about this year at Phoenix is they've got a sensitivity room. And so I get overstimulated. And when I get overstimulated, I tend to just like, it's almost like you just see the like the energy meter go I just like when I start getting low, I definitely hit the empty bin. And when that empty bin hits, I know what I need to do to recharge. And recharging is being alone, away from noise, or away from most people, sometimes all people, depending on how stimulated I am. And I feel like over the past couple of years, I've learned how to tell when my battery is starting to get low so I can what's the word, like normalize myself, like manage myself and recharge before I go completely depleted and then into the negative, which is horrible. I'm really excited because this year at Quiltcon they're going to have a decompression space. It's going to be, excuse me, a zone that is dimly lit, has a lot of places where you can go and just recharge your battery. So if you suffer from like PTSD or anxiety or you're overstimulated, because there's a lot of stimuli at QuiltCon, you can go into this space for 15 minutes or whatever and just recharge and then go back to the quilt show. And I think that is one of the most exciting things that I am looking forward to because I can see myself using that, especially because we won't be staying at a hotel next to QuiltCon. We're going to be staying a bit away, and the only way I would be able to escape that is to go back to my hotel room or back to the Airbnb or whatever and just recharge there. And that would require going to my car, getting in the car, driving 15-20 minutes away, decompressing, and then packing back up in the car and coming back to QuiltCon. I don't want to do that when I just need 15-minute break. I just need a 15-minute break, you know? Mary says she really does, folks. I do. And Ian jokes with me all the time. He says he can see when I hit bottom. Mary's mentioned it too. I think Tiffany's seen it as well. If they've been around me for quite a while to see that. Tammy said, Becca, I love the pumpkins. Where did you get the pattern? Do exclamation pattern in the chat and it'll drop a link to the pattern that inspired this. It is not the same. I will type up in the description box down below what the cutting instructions were. And once I get that kind of finalized, what all the measurements are for what my finished project is, I will, if I can find time, create a free page on my website where you can just download the instructions or go to it on the website instead of paying for a pattern. Oh gosh. Tiffany said the Phoenix floor will be as bad as Raleigh was. Also, loads of escalators down. Overpeopled. I get overpeopled. I definitely get overpeopled. Linda says, I understand the overstimulation. I get overstimulated frequently. You know, I never knew that that's what I was. I never knew that I struggled with that until COVID and things slowed down. I never knew that, but now I do, and now I know how to manage it. So, Josie said, I did some coasters. Susan worked on a Project Linus quilt to send to WNC. Awesome. Oh, heck yeah, heck yeah. Mary says, but we all love you, Becca, and we just want to make sure that you have time to decompress. That'll be the one thing that I will miss about Mary not being at QuiltCon with me this year. Sadly, she's only got 2 weeks of vacation time. One of those weeks she's using to spend with me at a retreat in Alabama, and the other of those 2 weeks she is using to spend with me at Disney World. So she has 0 vacation time left for her this year. So she won't be going to QuiltCon in Phoenix. I'm going to miss her. Ian's going to miss her. Tiffany's going to miss her. We're all going to miss her. but we'll FaceTime her, we'll chat with her in the evenings, we'll send her photos and videos so that she can still feel included. So if we do any meetups or hangouts, we might ask you to send a little video recording via my phone to Mary. So just stop by. If you want to say hi to Mary, we'll pull out my phone. You can say hi to Mary virtually. I know she'll absolutely love that. But the one thing that I will miss about Mary is she can recognize when I'm getting there, and she's part of the reason why I feel like I'm able to regulate myself a little bit more, because she sees it and she'll acknowledge it to me. And so it's made me kind of a little aware of when that's happening, and I can vocalize, okay, I need to decompress. So she's been amazing with that. Dr. Kathy Smith says, I'm so happy Quiltcon is at the convention center. I can take the light rail and not deal with parking. Barbara says, I'm sorry if I missed it, but what is the quilt behind you? I did talk about this probably about 15 or 20 minutes ago. It is from the Bliss Block of the Month from Sew Sampler, and I think I had a video on it. Of course you will, Mary. We'll make sure to include you as much as we possibly can. Anna says, I have a hard time recognizing that I'm overstimulated till I'm struggling not to melt down. Some of my friends can tell though, and it's so much easier if we catch it early. Anna, that was my struggle. That was my struggle. When I am when I am fully charged or even just halfway charged, I want to do all the things with all of the people. And I tend to overcommit and do all of those things and give and give and give and be everywhere. And I'm going in 20 different directions at once. And I'm fine with it. I have no problem with it. But as that energy bar starts to deplete, I start to get overstimulated, and then I start to get stressed out. And then once it bottomed out, I didn't recognize what was happening. And so it would start dipping negative. And when it started dipping negative, I would get resentful and hateful and angry and short tempered. And it just got worse and worse and worse. And sometimes it would just turn into an all out, like, I'm mad and I'm picking arguments with people. And I didn't even realize what was causing it. But now that I know that, I know how to regulate myself. It's still taking it's still taking me a bit to work through, but goodness, you are so right. It is so much easier when you can catch it early. Tiffany says, I just play the follow the leader and then take my own breaks as needed. She sure does. She's just like, okay, I'm going over here. I'm done. I remember last year at Quiltcon, one of the things that I thought was funny, I had saved my shopping money for Quiltcon, and I liked looking at the vendor booths, and I probably spent the first 2 days or so just looking at the vendors and not really looking at the quilts. And somebody had come up to Tiffany and was like, hey, where's Becca? And Tiff was like, oh, she has shiny thing syndrome. Because I was going up and down all the aisles for the vendors. I probably stopped at every vendor booth like 2 or 3 times. I did. I wanted to see what was in the vendor booths. I love gadgets. I loved looking at the notions. I didn't buy tons and tons of stuff, but I did like the shopping probably more than I did the quilts, if I'm being honest. Jennifer says it's always good to find some quiet time when you're around people, and it is great to recognize that in yourself. Good self-awareness. It's taken me 40 some years to get here, but thank you, Jennifer. Happy birthday to your daughter, Susan. Sleepy now. I got nice to catch you all. Take care out there. See you around soon. See you later. Oh, look, there's Stephanie Fulton, the lady we were talking about who finished this quilt for me. She says, sorry, very late back on our way home from dinner. It does my heart good to do for others and for very kind, caring people who I know appreciate them. You're the best, Becca. Thank you. I love this. Like, I know that this quilt, so Stephanie finished it for me. I talked about this a few minutes ago. Um, that quilt is never, it is never leaving my possession. And it has hung at some quilt shows. It hung at it's hung at a few places, and it has like little labels from the places that it got to hang at stitched to the back that Mary put them on for me. Isn't that great? So I'm really excited. Suzanne says, yes, Becca, window shopping is always fun. Absolutely. Linda says, I'm moving just north of Phoenix, so my friend and I plan to do 3 part days instead of 1 marathon day. Mary says, the vendor booths are my favorite parts of quilt shows, and especially Quiltcon, since I'm not a fan of modern type quilts. The Gen X Quilt Co says, what pattern was used for the edge to edge on the quilt hanging behind you? I don't know because I didn't quilt it. Beth from Goody Goods did. I will post a picture of the quilting detail to my Facebook group later tonight, and then you can check that out. I don't know what the name of the pantograph is, though, but I'm sure Beth could tell me. Joy T says, I might go to look at the panels and buy some thread. Awesome. Josie Brown says, no, I don't need anything. And hubby and I are going to a car show in Locust. Awesome. Folks are agreeing with Mary that the vendors are the favorite part of the show for them too. Yeah. All right, guys, it is 9. Oh, wait, hold on. Here's Tiffany's comment. She says, I'm not a vendor booth girl. I like looking at the quilts. We were very different at Quiltcon. I'm not much of a shopper, but I do love to play with all the long arms. I loved watching her go play with the long arms. So that was a lot of fun too. All right, guys, it is 9:30. I'm going to end the live here because I want to go get some dinner. I am very hungry, and that lasagna smells amazing. And then I want to make some more pumpkin blocks. So I'm probably going to have a late night sewing. And my hope is that on Friday of next week, I will have this quilt fully quilted and bound hanging up behind me, even if it's only 4 blocks. Thank you, friends, for hanging out with me this Friday night. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're not already. The podcast episode drops on the Sew Off Kilter podcast on Wednesday. And we'll have that set up as a premiere. And in that live stream, in that premiere, we'll give you all the details for our 1,000 subscriber giveaway because you guys got us over the 1,000 subscriber mark. Thank you so much for that. If you don't know what the podcast is, do !podcast in the chat. It'll get you a link over to that channel. And by the way, we only have one video on that channel. Episode 1. We've got a couple of shorts talking about the video coming out, but only one video. And as of a couple of days ago, that video had over 11,000 views, which for a brand new channel that only has 1,400 subscribers on it is mind-blowing. So thank you for watching the video. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for making it a success. I can't wait to see where this podcast journey takes us. In the meantime, unleash your creativity, do something fun this weekend, and I'll see you guys all back here next Friday night. Bye.